Stokastic NBA Strategy Show with Adam, and I'm excited to talk about a 4-game slate this morning. Shout out to our sponsor, PrizePicks, for presenting the show. Adam, how are you doing today on this Thursday?
Doing pretty well. Looking forward to another NBA slate. Last night didn't really go my way again. Kind of normal stuff. Lost like 50%. Had a lot of guys that I played do well, but just didn't have everything come together. So looking forward to another one.
Yeah, it's a 4-game slate. A handful of teams on a back-to-back, but some exciting matchups, especially the Dallas-Brooklyn matchup I'm looking forward to tonight. Obviously, we come off these back-to-backs are always really fluky. The other night, it felt like April NBA in October, and I think that's going to be kind of a trend we see all season long. I think load management is going to get to a point where Adam Silver is going to have to reinforce something. I do think it's pretty ridiculous at times, but it makes sense from a team player perspective to rest these guys out, stagger these guys out throughout the season. But heading into like another short slate on this Thursday night, obviously ownership's going to lead to being more concentrated. Do you like look at teams that are back-to-back? Does that change anything up for you? Are you a little more cautious to attack teams on a back-to-back, or do you not care?
No, not really. I mean, you're still basing projections and stuff off of Vegas totals, so I'm not overly concerned about it. Like, the line's going to do what it does. Individual players, maybe you have a little bit more concern for, but really, I don't care.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, the injury report's like kind of our best friend until they lie to us, but it's something that on back-to-backs I'm a little skeptical of like what team's going to pull that surprise rest situation. I mean, there's a handful of situations where I'm keeping an eye on tonight. We'll see what ends up happening. But make sure everyone who's tuning in, give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and also hit that notification bell because, God, we have so much damn content today on this Thursday with a Thursday night football game. Great game between hopefully the Ravens and Buccaneers. We'll see what ends up happening in showdown over there. But so much NBA content throughout the night. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe button for us. It'll go a long way for us on the Stokastic channel. Let's start with the first game. Dallas takes on Brooklyn. Dallas is 2.5-point favorites against this Brooklyn team. Brooklyn is on a back-to-back, and Dallas did play on Tuesday night where I thought they kind of laid a goose egg against that shorthanded New Orleans team. But obviously, just going on the Dallas side of things, it's been Luka, but then there's also been this hyper-efficient Christian Wood, who I'm dubious of going to today. Let's talk about Luka Doncic across the board. Tough not to love Luka. He's already in shape this season. In seasons previous, he kind of plays himself into shape. I do think Eurobasket has helped him play into shape to start off the season, and I think he's been awesome to start the season. Luka, what do we do with him?
Yeah, I mean, he obviously looks really good. That price tag is up to $12K on DraftKings, which is interesting. Just kind of more aggressive pricing than we've seen in like any sport recently from DraftKings. And he is also only point guard eligible, so not the easiest to get him into lineups. As a result, we only have him projected for 17% ownership right now. We still have him being optimal about 23% of the time. So I still want to get there as much as I can. We have him projected to be the highest scoring player on DraftKings by 8.5 points ahead of Ja Morant. So, obviously you're getting it's obviously somebody you want to get to, but at the same time, it's a 4-game slate. We don't know how much value we're going to have. And he's nearly $2,000 more than Morant. He is $2,000 more than Kevin Durant. He's almost $3,000 more than SGA playing again without Josh Giddey. So this is the first slate we've had in a while, and obviously this could change throughout the day. But first slate we've had in a while where I think it's like legitimately difficult to get to the pay up guys. We kind of saw that yesterday prior to some of the news breaking, where it was somewhat difficult to get to Giannis. I know, like before Jaden Ivey got ruled out, and before I think there was one other piece of news that we got. I wasn't getting as much Giannis as I had expected to, but we're kind of seeing that again today, where the most the highest projected guy on the slate is actually priced pretty much correctly.
Yeah, and especially a guy like Luka Doncic, and we might there's a handful of studs on the slate where it might be a situation where Luka, I don't know how this plays out. If Luka is the highest scoring player on the slate, he might not crack the winning or slash optimal lineup just because of how the way he's priced and how value is breaking out so far this morning. But Luka obviously has the upside to obviously just destroy the slate. It's just who he is. But looking at around on this rest of this Dallas team, Christian Wood has been bowling out in this two-man pick and roll situation. All his baskets are super efficient. They're either dunks or they're at the free throw line, or he's just shooting lights out from three. He's been pretty awesome, but I'm dubious of this efficiency, and I'm willing to go under the field right now. We haven't projected for 26 minutes. I do think that's kind of on the lower side of things. I do think there's a chance he could play low 30 minutes, but 29, 30 minutes or so. But I don't think this efficiency is here to stay. And that's what I'm kind of betting against is Christian Wood just coming down to earth. And I don't want to be there with the field. And I want to go way under the field on Christian Wood. How do we attack Christian Wood against this Brooklyn defense?
Yeah, so I mean, the efficiency is certainly going to come down. Like he's got a 73% true shooting percentage so far this year. It is basically impossible for that to stay there. But the rates look really good. 35.5% usage rate, 22% rebounding percentage, 11% assist percentage. He's going to be a very, very good point per minute guy. And I think the minutes are going to be somewhat volatile coming off the bench. And we've already seen that this year. But we did see him get 29.5 minutes last game. And there's nothing really that I think has to be different because obviously Tim Hardaway Jr. didn't play in that game. But you also saw Spencer Dinwiddie get 38 minutes. You saw Reggie Bullock get 35 minutes. So, Campazzo off the bench got 13 minutes. And so did Josh Green. So I don't really think Hardaway I don't think there's any real trickle-down effect that caused Christian Wood to play more from Hardaway. I think it was just that we're going to see games where Christian Wood plays 28 to 30 minutes. The issue for me is that he's $7,500 already on DraftKings. So he's kind of priced for that 28 to 30 minutes. And if he plays less than that, you're really in trouble. He is getting 10% ownership, which is kind of high at that price tag, but at the same time, it is only a 4-game slate. He's got a really high ceiling. So right now we have him actually projected to go a little bit under owned at 7,500. So I like him more right now than I did last slate. Like if the slate started right now, I think I'd be getting to a good amount of him. But again, it's kind of going to depend on what other value opens up, because as value opens up today, I'm going to be wanting to get away from the mid-range Christian Wood type guys and getting more of, the Lukas at the top and then whatever value opens up. So kind of dependent on how the slate shakes out value-wise, I think how much Christian Wood I get to.
Yeah, and I think that those are valid points, and surprised to see that he's going under own, and interesting to see what that final ownership will look like once the games start. But he by no means will be a priority for me tonight. I think I'd rather take some chances on Dinwiddie or Tim Hardaway Jr. instead, just because of what their ownership might look like. Tim Hardaway Jr. right now is questionable. It is the foot soreness. He did break his foot last year, so we'll see if he plays. Other guys on this team, there are a bunch of secondary options that you can take some flyers on. There's Dorian Finney-Smith, Maxi Kleber, Reggie Bullock, JaVale McGee. Out of any of those guys spark any interest for you, feel free to throw in Dinwiddie in that mix. But for me, I'm always cautious with these secondary Mavericks guys.
Yeah, so Dinwiddie, I think, is one of the guys that is going to be somewhat dependent on Tim Hardaway Jr. If Hardaway is in, I'm expecting that we're getting around 30 minutes from Dinwiddie. But if he's out, like we saw last game, you can easily get 36, 37 minutes from him at 5,500. So far this year, 0.86 DraftKings points per minute, 23% usage rate for Dinwiddie. So if Hardaway's in, he's going to look like a reasonable value option at 5,500. If Hardaway's out, he's going to pull more ownership, but also just project as a better option. Guys like Finney-Smith, Reggie Bullock, minutes are going to be there, but obviously these guys aren't out there to score and produce fantasy points. So you're kind of just hoping to run into some defensive stats, run into some hot 3-point shooting. It can certainly happen, but it's nothing you're really going to rely on. And then JaVale McGee at 3,600. he's somewhat interesting to me if better value doesn't open up. We know he's not going to play a ton of minutes. You're just going to get those, 3 rotations, one to start the first, one to close the second, one to open the third, and he'll be done. So you're probably looking at like 12 to 14 minutes, but he is a really good point per minute guy. And at 3,600 and only 4% ownership right now, for 5% ownership, if more value doesn't open up, I don't mind just hoping you get one of those games where JaVale McGee, blocks 4 or 5 shots in his 12 to 14 minutes and just has a really big game.
Yeah, I think that's completely fine to take flyers on a 4-game slate. As a guy like JaVale McGee, sometimes on a 4-game slate, if he gets you 20 and helps you jam in that extra stud that potentially can get you 60 or 60 plus, I do think your lineup is separating yourself from somewhat of the rest of the field. So yeah, JaVale McGee is one of those guys I consistently like taking some flyers on, being a little bit ahead of the field in tournament perspective. He's definitely not cracking my lineup if I build one, but definitely in the tournament perspective, 150 max situation. Yeah, JaVale McGee's cracking some of my lineups. On to the Brooklyn side we go. I mean, this game is the second highest total, third highest total on the slate. Pardon me there. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. It's the two-headed monster here. Their big three has kind of been disappointing as Ben Simmons, in terms of fantasy perspective, just keeps falling out. We'll see how that improves throughout the season. But KD and Kyrie are priced appropriately, in my opinion. Yes, they both have tournament ceiling, but they don't grade out as great point per dollar value plays. They, I think, are solid and excellent tournament options. Talk to me about KD and Kyrie, and then wrap up with Ben Simmons. What the hell do we do with Ben Simmons?
Yeah, so I mean, the way this slate looks right now, I think it's the most interest I've had in Durant or Irving this year. And that just goes back to right now the relative lack of value, and also that Luka is 12K. On most slates where the Nets have played, it's been, sort of like, well, obviously Durant can have a big game and Kyrie can have a big game, but you only have to pay like, $800 more or $1,000 more to get to somebody like Giannis, who is just clearly better. Here you have to pay 2K or 3K more, 2 to 3K more to get up to Luka. So as a result, you're actually getting 16% ownership coming into Durant, which is very comparable to Luka's ownership. You're getting about 11% coming into Kyrie. So far this year, the production hasn't really been that good for either of them, but you still have a 30% usage rate for Irving. You have a 35.5% usage rate for Durant. So right now, I actually think they're better plays today than they have been on, I think, any slate that they've been on this year. And then with Ben Simmons, I saw somebody say it in chat earlier that like you kind of can just spend 2 seconds on Ben Simmons at this point, and I agree. It's just he's at a price point at 6,400. He also has point guard, small forward eligibility, which is really flexible. There's always going to be a ceiling there, just because there's not that many people in this price range that can get a triple double. Obviously, if Ben Simmons gets a triple double, it's not going to be of the like really sexy variety where it's 30, 10, and 10, but there's not many guys in this price range that could even go 10, 10, 10. Like there's very limited guys that are ever priced around here that give you that potential upside. The downside is that Ben Simmons sucks at scoring. He has a 14% usage rate this year. He has a 43.8% true shooting percentage. He does have a 36.1% assist percentage, which leads the team. And that, I think, is part of the reason that you're only seeing 1.15 DraftKings points per minute from Irving, 1.3 from Durant. They both have assist percentages around 21% instead of being a little bit higher. So I think Simmons is cutting into them a little bit in that regard. 11% rebounding percentage is fine. Played 35 minutes yesterday. I did see tweets that during yesterday's game, he was making his way to the back to stretch out, making his way into the tunnel to stretch out his back. Maybe we get him not playing today, but that's, obviously we'll just wait and see. But assuming he's in, it's kind of just the same thing it has been. He's 6,400. He's getting 22% ownership. That's a little bit higher than I would like, but it is going to be really easy to fit him in the lineups and then just hope that you get like a 10-10-12 game out of him.
Yeah, I think I think as tournament players, we're just hoping for that Ben Simmons spike game and hoping to be ahead of the field when that happens. But he's been disappointing for a fantasy perspective. And I think also in a real life basketball perspective, the fit hasn't really gelled so far in terms of a winning perspective. I do think that that'll improve as the season gets along. But these Nets guys look a lot better on FanDuel than on DraftKings. So definitely take advantage of the Nets pricing on FanDuel 9.7, 9.4, 5.8 for KD, Kyrie, and Ben Simmons, respectively. Under the secondary guys, Joe Harris, obviously coming back from that extended injury last year. I believe is he questionable? I don't think he's questionable, but it's a back-to-back. He's one of those guys we might get a late injury report situation where they might rest him, but no inclination right now. But just besides being a back-to-back, A guy who's been performing really well in terms of fantasy perspective has been Royce O'Neal. 5-1 on FanDuel, $4,700 on DraftKings. He's reached his ceiling perspective from my perspective, just from his days in Utah. Is there something that's different happening with his rates in Brooklyn that he's like just performing really well?
I don't think so. I mean, he's averaged 0.69 DraftKings points per minute this year, 12.8 usage rate, 10% assist percentage, 5.5% rebounding percentage, 46% true shooting. Um, yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah, it's just a guy who I think if has any type of ownership, I'll be going under the field on. Nick Claxton, 6K and 6,700 FanDuel seems a little too steep for me. Wrap up Nick Claxton and any interest in these Brooklyn Nets bench players.
Yeah, I mean, Claxton's kind of tough at 6K. Like, he's a good fantasy producer, 1.02 DraftKings points per minute, but the minutes are, questionable. Played 23 and a half minutes yesterday. Wasn't really in foul trouble. I think pretty tough to prioritize him at that price tag. We have him getting about 9% ownership. They're on Sharp at 3,700. He's kind of in that JaVale McGee category where there's probably going to be better value that opens up. But if there isn't, you're talking about somebody that's going to play like 12 to 14 minutes. That is a very good point per minute guy. If you want to just hope that you run into some ridiculous game out of him and it lets you get Luka in, then fine. But certainly nothing I feel good about or am excited about at all.
Yeah, Daron Sharp is one of those guys. If you have a couple of them in 150, I'm fine with that. It's been like I want to say I don't know what the average minute split has been between Sharp and Claxton so far this season, but it might be 28-14, but there could be games where it's 24-24, depending on Claxton foul trouble. So there are ways where Sharp can pay off. On a 4-game slate, are you okay with playing Sharp and Claxton? I mean, I'm just saying in hypothetical situation where the way Claxton's priced, I don't think that happens that much, but two bigs on the same team are you okay to do that on a 4-game slate, or are you avoiding that?
I typically avoid it. The exception is if, I mean, obviously, the obvious exception is if there's just a bunch of injuries. But also, if, like, let's say Claxton for some reason was like 4K and both guys could just easily pay off their salaries in their normal minutes. But with Claxton at 6K, you need full run from Claxton. And if Claxton's getting full run, then Sharp isn't. So I would not spend 10K on Claxton plus Sharp.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. On to the next game we go. Clippers taking on Oklahoma City. The Clippers right now are 7-point favorites. I think the total right now is at 217 and a half. This Clippers team really threw a wrench into lineups the other day and kind of just took an April NBA day type of situation, as we saw no Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard. And Paul George is questionable today with a non-COVID illness. It would be nice to see him play, but this Clippers team is going to look a lot different than they did on Tuesday night, where we were rostering the guys of Norman Powell, who was an absolute disaster in terms of fantasy perspective, but Terrence Mann was solid. And that's really about it. I don't know. And Zubac was good. But this Clippers team, in terms of pricing, are led by Paul George and Ivica Zubac on DraftKings. Paul George looks great if there's no Kawhi Leonard and if he's going to play. This rest of this Clippers team is going to be a nightmare to figure out all season long. They might just all play 28 minutes all year long. But Clippers, Paul George, and what else do we do?
Yeah, I mean, if George goes, he looks great here, especially because if George plays, it means that you're so the guys on the Clippers are priced up anyway from where they were the other day. But if George plays, it means that there's even less value to be had from the Clippers. So in the context of the slate, that means it's going to be harder to get to Luka. So similarly, or as a result, George at 9,400 is going to look even better. You're getting him without Kawhi, like you said. So the production should be very, very good. I really like George at 9,400 if he's good to go. If he's not good to go, then you get this same messy Clipper situation that you had the other day because Marcus Morris is still out, Kawhi Leonard is still out. So you would get the same just mess of a team, but at less appealing pricing. Norman Powell's come up $700 from the other day. Zubats is up to 6,500. John Wall and Reggie Jackson both sitting at 5,400. Covington's up $700. Batum's up $1,100. So Man's up 700. So you would still get, if Paul George is out, a team that you're looking to get to, but it wouldn't be with the same frequency that you were getting there the other day because they've just all seen their prices go up like 10 to 20%.
Yeah, it's we'll see what happens with that Paul George news, but
For what it's worth, I just got it pulled up, but 1,147 minutes since the start of last season without Kawhi on the floor. 1.33 DraftKings points per minute, 33% usage rate, 28.2% assist percentage for Paul George.
Yeah, and I think that's how it is. Secondary guys, I mean, John Wall's priced up. I do think you can still take a flyer on 3,900 Norman Powell. He just had an awful shooting game, but keep in mind these minutes are kind of like they'll kind of have a minutes cap because all their players are really good NBA rotational players, and there's no reason for any single player to play 36 minutes. And they're going to run 10 deep on most nights. Once even Kawhi comes back after he's dealing with this knee stiffness, which is really strange after 18 months. So, any final thoughts on this Clippers team? We can hop on over to the Oklahoma City side.
I mean, if George is out, to your point about the basically unofficial minutes cap, even with George and Kawhi and Morris out the other day, the only player that played north of 30 minutes was Ivica Zubac at almost 35. Powell played 30. Jackson played 30. Everybody else played less. So it is still a really, really deep team. They only went 9 deep. Like, they could screw with their rotation even more and throw like Brandon Boston Jr. in and go 10 deep. But that is something to keep in mind as well. You did see a lot of shooting from Reggie Jackson. It did not result in a good fantasy game, but that's part of the reason that other guys didn't come through was Reggie Jackson was just shooting every chance that he got. There would still be upside on him at 5,400, just hoping those shots fall, but he's been really inefficient for a while. John Wall's kind of the same thing, only played 19 and a half minutes last game, but certainly could play more and did have a 32% usage rate. So at 5,400, if George is out, there is a ceiling on John Wall. And then other than that, you mentioned Powell at 3,900 still on FanDuel. That would still look like a great value if George doesn't play. It's reasonable if George is in. On DraftKings at 5,500, you can certainly play Powell, but it's not the same play that it was the other day.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And those are also all sentiments. Also, Keith, a key point I forgot to mention at the top, Marcus Morris is also still remains out. So there is going to be a little bit of a different rotation just than normally, even if Kawhi were to be out. So keep that in mind. He's expected to return next game. On the Oklahoma City side of things, on the backs of SGA, I believe Steve Buster took home like $300,000 on Tuesday night. So SGA was awesome. And with no Josh Giddey, I continue to expect him to perform really well. We also saw guys like Trey Mann ball out. I think Aaron Wiggins was really good. I'm a little dubious on Aaron Wiggins' performance, but I think SGA, we can go right back to him. All the usage is going to be there. Yeah, he's expensive, but it's tough to turn down that usage. Talk to me about SGA.
Yeah, SGA without Giddey has just been great forever, basically. He's another guy that makes it kind of difficult to get to Luka unless like real value opens up, because you're getting somebody that averages like 1.5 fantasy points per minute, and he's only $9,300. He's projected for 26.5% ownership, so he's actually projected to be more popular than Luka right now. But you're getting an almost $3,000 discount since the start of last season. I'm pulling up the rates now just to double check. I know it's been insanely good for SGA without Giddey, but the entire offense runs through him. You get a bump in assist percentage, as you would expect when Giddey's not out there. You get a bump in usage rate because the ball is just in SGA's hands more. So he's going to look really, really good here at 9,300. Love getting to him. 1,070 minutes without Giddey since the start of last year. 1.44 DraftKings points per minute, 34.5% usage rate, and a 34.5% assist percentage.
Yeah, and SGA looks outstanding at that $9,300 price tag. 10-3, where guys like KD, Kyrie are cheaper than him. I might take my chances with one of those guys in SGA on FanDuel, but DraftKings, he looks pretty awesome, 9,300. But everyone else is a bunch of meh. I don't have much interest in Trey Mann, Lou Dort, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, or Aaron Wiggins. Really, they've been priced appropriately. And if you want to play Trey Mann maybe on FanDuel, you can do so, but not someone. I'm never really that excited to play Trey Mann by any means. A bunch of these guys are tournament flyers, if that.
Yeah, I think Mann is sort of in that Dinwiddie category at 5,600, where it's just going to be easy to fit him into lineups. Without Giddey on the floor since the start of last year, he's averaged 0.85 DraftKings points per minute. You don't expect him to have the offensive outbursts that he did last game, but he's still cheap enough where, given the likely minutes he's going to play, he played 36 minutes last game. He's still a pretty good value at 5,500, I think. Again, you're not expecting 40 and a half DraftKings points. You're not expecting a 30% usage rate, but I do still think that he's a little bit underpriced for Giddey being out. And then the rest of this team, you're kind of just rolling the dice, hoping for the best. Lou Dort has been, well, never good offensively, but especially bad offensively so far this year. And he's priced up a bit. So it's really difficult, I think, to want to get to him outside of, a handful of lineups at 5,700. Aaron Wiggins went from 3,100 to 3,900. He obviously had a really good game last time out, but this is somebody that since last year has averaged 0.7 DraftKings points per minute. So don't get too carried away with what he did last time out. He's basically just an okay point per dollar value, and you're hoping to run good on him. Robinson Earl played 23 minutes. Muscala played 18 minutes. Kenrich Williams got to 25 minutes. Baisley played 20. It's another team that's just running. It's kind of like the bad version of the Clippers, where they just have a bunch of guys that they're going to throw out there in their rotation that are pretty much interchangeable. The difference being that the Clippers have all NBA players and the Thunder have mostly G League players.
Yeah, we'll see. Aaron Wiggins' ownership at the start of lock. That'll be a true test to what recency bias ownership looks like in the year of NBA DFS in 2022. Years past, I do think his ownership will be much higher than it is now. But I mean, like 2 or 3 years ago, he'd be like double-digit ownership in a heartbeat. He might be much lower than that, as people's process have just really improved of late. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes throughout the regular season. All right, there's about 433 people watching right now. I need everyone to hit that like button for us. That'd be awesome. I know if you guys are tuning in later, watching the recorded show, please hit that like button. It'll go a long way, and hit that notification bell. And this channel has been awesome, and make sure to check out the rest of our content that we have throughout the rest of the day. Bunch of NFL content, bunch of short form video. Adam, you got a couple short form videos, right?
Yeah, I'll have a DraftKings tournament plays video, FanDuel tournament plays video, and the NBA injury report video coming out.
That's awesome. I'm assuming those come out right around the early afternoon. So
Yep.
Make sure to watch that content. It's really valuable because as the day evolves, ownership projections change, news comes out, and you want to be on top of that news. And just being on top of the news on a day in, day out just improves your process for NBA DFS specifically. So watch all the content we have. Hit that like button. Thank you so much. On to Miami and Golden State.
One other thing I wanted to mention, because SMP made the point in chat, and it is a good point. OKC staggered SGA and Man last game. So I had mentioned that since the start of last year, Man has averaged 0.85 DraftKings points per minute with a 22% usage rate without Giddey on the floor. So that's obviously including the minutes where SGA is out there and the minutes where he isn't. And it's a good baseline for how this game will look overall. But in the 443 minutes Man has played without SGA or Giddey, he does have a 27.8% usage rate. He still only averaged 0.94 DraftKings points per minute because he has a 48.8% true shooting percentage. But to SMP's point, like if they run that same rotation, there will be plenty of opportunities for Man when he's playing without SGA on the floor.
No, I think that's a solid thing to bring up. And one thing to keep in mind, Ousmane Dieng did not play last game. If he were to be active, he might steal some minutes from the secondary guys. So kind of makes sense.
He played 11. He played like 10 and a half minutes.
Oh, he did play 10 minutes last game?
Yeah.
Someone else. Did I miss? Who didn't play?
Isaiah Joe didn't play.
Isaiah Joe didn't play. Okay. My bad there.
Well, he played 3 seconds.
Okay. There's just a bunch of guys who could just steal minutes from the other guys that we mentioned. There's Adarius Baisley, Mike Muscala, Pokusevski could get some run. It's just kind of really hard to pinpoint and have confidence in any of those guys in true fashion. But on to the Miami Golden State game, probably one of the better matchups of the night, I think. 227 total. Golden State's favored by 6.5. Miami is on a back-to-back. I don't expect them to rest anybody. Omer Yurtseven continues to be out, as does Victor Oladipo. Seems kind of led by they have their own big three in Bam, Jimmy Butler, and Tyler Hero, but Caleb Martin find a way to outscore them all last night. So granted, that just pisses me off. But let's talk about their big three: Bam, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero in this Golden State matchup.
Yeah, they I think look pretty good. You have seen prices come up a little bit. Tyler Hero pulling 20% ownership right now at 7,200. He's been very good this year, both in terms of being a high usage guy, but also rebounding well. Don't believe he had a good game last night, but he's been solid overall this year. 26 DraftKings points last night. Didn't play at all in the fourth quarter of their blowout win, but this year he's been rebounding well, which is nice. It's made him a little bit less scoring dependent. And then obviously he's scoring as well. 1.14 DraftKings points per minute so far. 19.5% assist percentage, 13.5% rebounding percentage to go along with the 25% usage rate. So that looks pretty good. We have him with about a 25% chance of being optimal and at 20% ownership. Bam at 7,300, center only, kind of just what he has been, every slate this year. I like the idea of getting to him because he should be able to produce at a higher rate than he is. But at the same time, he has really struggled this year, only averaging 0.89 DraftKings points per minute, only a 13.5% rebounding percentage, 12.5% assist percentage. You would like both of those to be a bit higher. 23% usage rate is pretty good. His true shooting percentage is 4 to 5 points below his career averages. So I do think he becomes more efficient as the year goes on. But basically looks like he's correctly owned. And the same goes for Jimmy Butler, power forward only, so not a lot of flexibility there at 8,600. He's averaged 1.09 DraftKings points per minute this year with a 25% usage rate, 20% assist percentage. He looks fine where you can get to him. So kind of like all three of those guys. I think Hero is the one that I like the most.
I like all three of these guys in some fashion. I do think at some point we will see Bam Adebayo's price tag surpass Jimmy Butler. I don't know if that's in December or January, and I kind of just want to ride that wave. I know he struggled to start off this season. So with that being said, Bam's probably my favorite Heat player to roster tonight. Tyler Hero's price tag already up to 7,200 on DraftKings. He is 7,500 on FanDuel. I do think this is kind of where we'll see Tyler Hero's price tag for majority of the season. These three guys I have some interest in. And then I do think I'll get up, not all, I don't think I'll get above the field on all three of them. Probably Bam will be the one guy who I will get ahead of the field on, just the way he's priced. I do think the matchup and the ceiling for Bam is there, and we just haven't seen it about 10 days into the season. But guy who's priced a bit low, and I do think can outperform that price tag is a 5,800 DraftKings Kyle Lowry and 5,100 on FanDuel Kyle Lowry. Do really like that $5,100 Kyle Lowry. In terms of rates and like point per minute, I know Kyle Lowry is getting old. He's carrying that wagon. I don't know if Kyle Lowry can be that same guy that we saw a couple years ago, but 5,100 seems cheap, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. This is one spot too to just keep an eye on the injury report because it is a back-to-back for Miami, and like you said, Kyle Lowry is old. He's been sort of like the prototypical tournament play for me this year. When he gets ownership, I don't really have an issue being like, all right, hopefully old ass Kyle Lowry doesn't have a big game. But then you get these other games where, he's like 5,200 or 5,400 on DraftKings and he's 3% owned. And it's like, all right, this guy's going to play 33, 34 minutes and have plenty of opportunities. And you've seen him come through a couple of times this year. Had a good game yesterday, or at least he was in the midst of it. He didn't play at all in the fourth quarter, but he had 33 and a half DraftKings points in his 26 minutes. With this being a shorter slate, though, he is going to get a little bit more ownership. And on DraftKings, that price tag came up a little bit to 5,800. So 12% ownership, 12% chance of being optimal. Just kind of seems like, a filler play for me. You mentioned 5,100 on FanDuel. That does still seem like a very cheap price tag, assuming that he's good to go tonight.
Yeah, and I think taking some shots with him makes a ton of sense. Let's wrap up this Miami team with a bunch of the secondary guys that are kind of AKA fantasy studs, and Caleb Martin, Max Strus, two guys I absolutely hate rostering night in and night out. They have burned me many times because I have not played them. What the hell do we do with these two guys?
I mean, I think Martin at 4,600 small forward seems like a pretty good value option right now, at least until we get something better. He returned from his suspension. He played 29 and a half minutes yesterday. Maybe would have played a little bit more down the stretch if he closed, but that's no guarantee. But either way, if you're talking 28, 30 minutes from Caleb Martin, he's around a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy. He just looks like a pretty decent value today. Max Strus had a really big game yesterday. You and I were talking before the show. I randomly had him in 2% of my lineups, which when I realized it was not really happy about, and then I obviously was. But we've seen sort of weird rotations from him this year where I don't think we can totally count on him playing 28 minutes, but there is a path there. He comes off the bench, and then if he plays well, he just never goes back to the bench. So that path is there, but at 5K, you're also, I think, overpaying a bit. He is getting 5% ownership compared to 18% for Caleb Martin. I would say that I don't think Caleb Martin is 3 to 4 times, as likely to succeed as Max Strus. So maybe kind of interesting in tournaments, but not much confidence.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of these guys are a bunch of gross guys that even like I will not have much interest in. It's a short slate. I still don't have much interest in these guys. I'd rather take some flyers on some lower end players and other teams instead. But I want everyone to hit that like button. I'm going to talk about an exciting deal with BetMGM. BetMGM has this awesome, awesome deal for NBA bets tonight. If you bet $10, you will win 200 if anyone hits a three-pointer. And we're going to talk about Steph Curry. And I'm pretty damn sure Steph Curry's hitting a three-pointer tonight. So this offer is available in all states except New York, Pennsylvania, and Missouri and Ontario. So make sure to hit that before the pregame today, and you'll get it. Just giving you a chance for $200 free. It's tough to turn that down any given night. So make sure to take advantage of this BetMGM no-brainer offer. Hit that like button for us as well. On to any final thoughts on Miami before we start Golden State?
Nope.
All right, on to Golden State. This Golden State team was in a heated battle against Phoenix before they got waxed in the fourth quarter. This Golden State team is just facing a tough time to start the season. Reigning champs do get the best of the other side. Usually heading into the season, it's a lot of player talk that they've said. We always get the best of the teams start off the season. And we've kind of seen that as their defense has been really bad. And everyone's gotten a year older. Maybe they're a little shook by the whole Poole and Green incident. I have no idea what's happening with their defense, but their two-headed monster this year has been Steph Curry and Andrew Wiggins. And then there's this bunch of secondary guys. And it's kind of weird not to mention Klay Thompson in that situation. But tournament perspective, Steph Curry's always has that tournament upside. And you've always had great analysis on Steph Curry. Does anything about Steph Curry and his price tag change today for you?
A little bit. So normally my general analysis of Curry is that he's like always at a price point where he's too high for his medium projection, but then it's also Steph Curry. So you're just going to have those games where he makes 10 3-pointers and you have to have him to win a tournament. Normally he gets enough ownership that I don't really get to much of him in tournaments. Today, that might be a little bit different though. And it goes back to the fact that Luka's as expensive as he is. As a general rule, DFS sites underprice the guys at the top. And that's why you typically just get stars and scrub slates. But today they didn't do that. Luka's 12K. So you're actually getting that 2K difference between him and Curry. And Curry's only projected for like 8.5% ownership. So he's getting less ownership than a lot of other guys in this range as well. I still don't think he's as good an option as like Gilgeous-Alexander. I think he's comparable to Durant, probably a little bit behind him, but you're still getting a massive ceiling from Curry at only 8.5% ownership on a 4-game slate. I am a little bit more interested in Curry in tournaments tonight than I normally am.
Yeah, and Steph Curry, where you get that 3-point bonus at 9,900 on DraftKings, you can definitely rack it up at 9,800 on FanDuel. He looks pretty solid. I mean, I'd rather play 400 extra for Curry than I would Kyrie on FanDuel, so he looks pretty awesome there. Andrew Wiggins, someone who has actually said that he's going to actively try to rebound more, and through 10 games, I haven't like officially seen it. I do think he's averaging more rebounds, like highest rebound rate so far in his career. I could be wrong there, but Andrew Wiggins, 6,900, 7,900 on FanDuel is a really eyebrow-raising price tag for Andrew Wiggins. We have never seen him priced like that almost ever, but he is their second dog to Curry. This is how the season's kind of started. I do think that will kind of plateau a little bit as the season goes along, but Andrew Wiggins, 6,900, 7,900. Tough to play him at these price tags, but maybe you think differently.
No, I mean, I think 6,900 on DraftKings is sort of just like neutral. 7,900 on FanDuel does seem expensive. We have him projected for about 15% ownership here. He's been good this year. He actually has averaged more fantasy points per minute than everybody on the team except for Curry at 1.23 DraftKings points per minute, 22% usage rate, 10.5% rebounding percentage, 11.5% assist percentage. I do expect that production to come down, but you're still talking about somebody that in competitive games is likely to give you 34 minutes or so and average around the fantasy point per minute probably. So at 6,900, I still think that's a pretty fair price tag. 7,900 certainly more difficult.
Yeah, and something that I was taking advantage of early on is because of what he had personally said that he's going to try to active rebound more is hitting the over on his rebound props, and they have worked out. But that's not the lines have already adjusted for that, so that's just shows how sharp Vegas is for that reason. Now there's a bunch of tournament flyers that I'm willing to take on with Jordan Poole, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson. And Klay Thompson did not play much basketball off season long. I do think he's dealing with some sort of conditioning issue. And now he's 5,600, where I'm really excited to roster some Klay Thompson at 5,600 just because of the tournament upside he has. And we get the 3-point bonus on DraftKings. 5,900 on FanDuel is okay, but yeah, Klay Thompson has taken a step back. Clearly, we can see that, but I mean, Klay Thompson should be $1,000 more expensive if you were to play 30 minutes. The issue is he's only playing 28, 29 minutes currently. Klay Thompson, are you willing to take some shots with Klay?
Yeah, I don't really think he's like underpriced at 5,600. He's just
Okay.
another guy sort of in that mix of guys that I don't feel very good about. I expect him to play around 28 minutes if he can manage to not get ejected today. But at the same time, like I would still rather play Jordan Poole if I can for $300 more. I think you're likely to get a couple more minutes from Poole. I think he's been the better fantasy producer so far. One DraftKings point per minute compared to 0.88 for Klay. Granted, Klay 46.8% true shooting percentage. That is guaranteed to come up. But I would lean towards Poole between the two of them at similar ownership. But on a 4-game slate, I'm certainly going to get to them both.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, these are Jordan Poole is obviously outstanding tournament flyer as well. Jordan Klein, what do you think of Jordan Poole's handle? Yeah, talking to you. Is your name Jordan Klein? Did you watch that highlight where he hit the hezzy on Damian Lee? Yeah, he hit the hezzy and then he got his eye knocked out the next play, didn't he? So, yeah, I think Jordan Poole has a real nice handle. It's been really impressive to see his growth in like from going from the G League up until pretty much getting the $140 million bag. But Draymond Green, another guy whose fantasy point per minute has just dropped over the last couple of years. Any final like thoughts on Draymond at that price tag, 5,700? He does have sneaky triple double upside. Maybe it's not as prominent as it used to be 3 or 4 years ago, but he can find a way to get there. Unlikely, but 5,700 Draymond and 6,100 on FanDuel seem like fine options. Nothing exciting.
Yeah, I mean he's one of the only guys in that price range with Simmons where like he actually can get a triple double here and there. Basically a fantasy point per minute again this year. 24.5% assist percentage is second highest on the team behind Poole. 9.7% rebounding percentage, 14% usage rate. You're just getting pretty normal production from Draymond. He played 29 minutes last game, lost a few minutes at the end of garbage time. Likely you're getting like 30 to 32 minutes here if the game's competitive. I like the price tag. I like that he's not or that he has power forward center eligibility. We haven't really talked about centers that we really like today outside of, having some interest in Bam. We have talked about a lot of guards that we like. So that is one thing that stands out about Green is that you can, plug him into the forward spots and be able to pay up for the guys that you really want to get to.
Yeah. And I have a question for you. With guys like Clay, Draymond, Dinwiddie, and like Ben Simmons all priced in that mid fives to high fives range, do you have a preference in wanting to pick one?
It kind of just comes down to ownership for me because I think they all project pretty similarly. Right now, ownership's about the same, so I don't expect to really have a preference. If one of them ends up being lower owned than the other two, that would be my preference.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I think I would significantly prefer just Ben Simmons, even ownership put aside. I do think I'd be willing to take some chances with Ben Simmons, but that's fair. I mean, I do think the bottom of the list would be Draymond for me, but we'll see what the ownership comes in at by the time contests start. Now, we kind of seen Looney and Wiseman enter more of a minute split as kind of expected. Any flyers on guys like Moses Moody, John Kaminga, JaMychal Green, James Wiseman, Looney?
If you go to the centers, I think that's reasonable. $4,200 price tag on Looney, getting 8.5% ownership. Wiseman at 4,300, getting 5%. Don't feel good about either one. The second half rotation was a bit different last game. Kuminga didn't play at all in the first half. He did play quite a bit in the second half. Some of that was, garbage time down the stretch, but he played the final like 15 minutes of the game. Maybe he's back in the rotation here. Moody actually had a pretty solid game. He was pretty firmly in the rotation. He is 3,300 with shooting guard small forward eligibility. I hate rostering this guy, but probably is kind of useful if you are trying to get to Luka.
Interesting. Yeah, the reason I Moody was in the rotation was the DiVincenzo injury. So something I missed to mention there. Dante DiVincenzo is will continue to remain out. Why don't you like rostering Moses Moody?
He doesn't score fantasy points.
Interesting. I do think that will change. I do think he'll end up being a really good fantasy producer by the end of the season. I do think he'll be really good.
I do not.
You don't think so?
No.
Interesting.
I don't know where he gets production from on this team. Like,
yeah, I mean, if I'm just saying for situations where like Curry were to be out, I do think he'll be.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he's played 760 minutes since last year. He's averaged 0.68 DraftKings points per minute.
No, he was awful last year. I just think that will improve drastically, like immensely throughout the regular season. If Moses Moody was playing 24, 25 minutes, I think he should be at least a $4,500, $5,000 player. Uh, but he's not going to play those minutes for a while. Uh, Outside of that, yeah, you explained it pretty well. The centers, I don't really have much interest. I do think I would rather take some chances on Wiseman over Looney, but that's just tournaments only.
Yeah, Weissman's kind of just like a McGee type play where he's a good point per minute guy. If you somehow get him out there for 20 minutes, you're going to be happy you played him, but good luck guessing, if and when that happens.
Yeah, that's just how Steve Kerr back end rotations are going to work out. We might even see Kuminga play 24 minutes today. Who knows? Based on what Steve Kerr wants to do. On to the next game. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Nope. Well, somebody in chat mentioned Clay got ejected after 19 minutes. I'd mentioned that too, but yeah, if anybody missed that, if you're looking at the game log, that's why Clay played 18 and a half minutes.
Yeah, the ejection did not help him whatsoever. On to Memphis and Sacramento. Total comes in at 236.5. Memphis is 2.5 point favorites. I think they just moved to 3 as the show has gone along, and it seems kind of low. I do think Memphis should take care of the Sacramento team pretty handedly. Maybe traveling out west is the reason why it's happening like that. But on this Memphis and Sacramento team, I will have an important shout out of price picks to make, specifically the Keegan Murray. So keep in mind with that situation coming up, take advantage of the promotion there. But Memphis side of things, last game we saw Desmond Bane erupt against Brooklyn Nets. He always happens to just erupt against this Brooklyn Nets team. I have no idea why that keeps happening, but he just balls out against that Brooklyn Nets team. But John Morant doesn't look as appealing as he did a week ago when there was no Dillon Brooks, and Dillon Brooks has returned. And then it's Morant and Bane are the two guys who have been targeting quite a bit. Now, Aldama's always a player that I've been aggressively over the field on. It's worked out 50-50 for me. How do you look at this Memphis Grizzlies team? Morant, Bane, any interest on those guys being aggressively over the field?
Yeah, I mean, I like both guys. The Kings are 4th in pace this year, so that sets up pretty nicely for Memphis. Brooks being back is a negative for both Morant and Bane, but there's still a really high ceiling there. Like Desmond Bane, since the start of last year, has actually averaged about the same fantasy points per minute with Brooks on the floor as off. He just has a usage rate 4 to 5 points lower when Brooks is on, but he's been more efficient. We saw that last game as well. I don't think it should actually be a thing that continues long term. Like I do think Dillon Brooks is bad for Desmond Bane, but there's still plenty of upside for Bane at 7K. He's still going to get low 20s usage most likely. 33% ownership is a lot, but I also understand why it's coming in there. John Morant's usage rate last year without Brooks on the floor was like 7 or 8 points higher than when Brooks was out there. But you're still talking about around a 30% usage rate with Brooks out there at 10,200, nearly $2,000 less expensive than Luka Doncic. 21% ownership coming into Morant. I think he looks very good here still. Obviously, if Dillon Brooks somehow were to not play, I would prefer both of these guys. But even with Brooks in, they both look good to me.
Yeah, I think those guys look solid. And I don't mind taking some flyers on Dillon Brooks. I know he's coming off an injury. He just chucks the ball, and that's the quickest way to fantasy points is scoring. And Dillon Brooks can put up 25 real life points in this matchup against Sacramento. Would not shock me at all. Are you willing to take some shots on Dillon Brooks today?
Yeah, he only played 24 minutes last game, so hopefully he plays a few more minutes here. But basically, I think the best way to sum up Dillon Brooks, and I was messaging with Josh about this yesterday because I don't understand why why reporters approach it this way. But there was an article saying basically that Dillon Brooks came back and gave Memphis exactly what they needed, and they were referring to him defending Kevin Durant, doing a good job on Durant. And one of the Memphis beat writers mentioned that in his 24 minutes, he also shot 2 for 13, and he kind of just said it as like Dillon Brooks doing Dillon Brooks things. And it was like him playing good defense does not mean he needs to go out there and shoot a million times. Like, why can't the Nets or the Grizzlies just get this guy to play good defense and not take a million shots? But they haven't figured out how to make that happen. So from a DFS standpoint, I am perfectly fine rostering him, especially on a 4-game slate. I don't expect him to go out there and play a ton of minutes yet, but the guy is just going to go out there and shoot every opportunity he gets. And he's relatively inexpensive in a good matchup. Shooting guard, small forward eligibility. So yeah, I'm happy to go to Dillon Brooks for as long as Dillon Brooks thinks he is good at shooting.
Yeah, I fucking hate Dillon Brooks. Just like in terms of basketball perspective, he's really annoying. I think he makes the Memphis team worse. I'd rather have them play Conchar over him. when Zaire Williams comes back, I'd rather have them play Zaire Williams over Dylan Brooks. I don't think he should be on this Memphis team if they want to win. He makes them objectively worse. So it might be a bold take. I might get a lot of hate for that, but I have
I mean,
yeah, he might.
I think it's a pretty normal take. Like he's really good defensively. It's just like why can't we dial back the shooting and still
Yeah,
have the defensive guy?
he shouldn't be shooting the ball more than 10 times a game. It's super annoying. But yeah, in terms of fantasy perspective today, I will be taking some shots just because he will be shooting the ball in an aggressive manner. That's just who he is. With him coming back, it does affect the usage on some other guys like Aldama when they do share the court. So Aldama is kind of priced appropriately. He just kind of falls in the range. Steven Adams is one of those centers that I really rarely have interest in him because his ceiling is like, for me, it feels like it's 30 points, and like Steven Adams at that price, like 30 points it's not gonna lose me anything. It's not gonna win me anything. And I'm trying to win. And Steven Adams, I don't think gives me that pathway. Is your sentiment on Adams similar, or do you have a counter argument to that?
I think I'm a little bit higher on him at 5,400 just because I don't really like the center position tonight. Like you're higher on Bam than I am. I don't mind just sort of trying to go cheap at center, at least amongst the guys that we've talked about so far. 5,400 from Adams here in a pace up spot. There should be plenty of rebounding opportunities. Like if he goes out there on a 4-game slate and just, grabs 14 rebounds, scores 12 points, puts up 35, 36 DraftKings points, you're going to probably want him in your lineups.
Yeah. And as we wrap up the rest of this team, any interest in guys like Conchar, Brandon Clark? It's a small slate, or Tyus Jones even?
Conchar is questionable, so I'll just mention that. But at 4,400, 5% ownership, played 26 minutes last game. I don't hate that as like just a low owned value guy that you're hoping plays well, sort of like Max Strus, but cheaper. Aldama at 5,200, I think is fine. He played another 32 minutes last game, probably a little bit underpriced. So not priorities for me, but at relatively low ownership, I don't mind throwing darts at those guys.
Yeah, I think that it's completely fine to do so. If Conchar were to be ruled out, I wouldn't mind getting a little ahead of the field on a guy like David Roddy. I do think he's a pretty talented rookie, but I just don't know what the minutes might look like. It might be too risky, even in tournaments today. But keep an eye on that name if Conchar were to be ruled out.
Yeah, I was sad. I don't even know who's ahead in the rotation between him and Laravia. Like last game, Roddy was the first guy in, but then in the second half, Laravia played and Roddy didn't.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I do think it might be split. We have no idea, but both are very similar fantasy point per minute guys at this moment, but things can definitely change, I think.
Oh, one other thing I guess to mention as far as dart throw guys off the bench, Tyus Jones, 4,600, getting some ownership, 0.9 DraftKings points per minute, just playing, your low to mid 20s roll off the bench. Not somebody that you would be interested in on a larger slate. On this slate, going to find his way into some lineups probably.
And and Brendan Clark is always a tournament option on a small slate like this, just because he could find his way to an up-tempo matchup against Sacramento. He could find his way onto performing at a much higher fantasy rate than he usually does. He's just one of those players who has shown the opportunity to do that. And I think Brandon Clark has potential to win you a tournament today. Clark I don't feel that great about Clark, but do you have any interest there?
I mean, I agree with you that he has upside. He's not really playing alongside Steven Adams, so I wouldn't play those two together. But if Adams gets in foul trouble, rolls an ankle, Memphis second unit gets hot, whatever it may be, Clark certainly can play well. And on that same note about Clark and Adams not playing together, I actually don't mind playing Jones and Morant in the same lineup. It's not my favorite thing to do. Like I would prefer to not, but they did close the first half together last game. You could, they are playing some minutes alongside each other. So with it being a 4-game slate, I don't mind having those two together, even though it's not ideal.
Yeah, and it's like a price perspective, 4,200. We haven't projected him in the high teens. Brandon Clark can get you high 20s, given like an extra 6 minutes a run. If he were to play 22 minutes, he could find his way there. Brandon Clark's a pretty good fantasy contributor. Onto the Sacramento side of things, I do think this team has already mixed up the rotation, with KZ Okpala been completely removed from the rotation from starting with the insertion of Keegan Murray, their rookie. I believe their 6th overall pick or 5th overall pick. I forget. Or no, sorry, he went 4th in the draft. He's been impressive fantasy-wise, and it's been fun to roster him. De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, I have interest in all three of these guys, Fox, Sabonis, and Keegan Murray, just because I like the pace, like you said, they've been playing at. And one of those guys I do think could be necessary to win you a tournament tonight. I like being ahead of the field on three of those guys. Their price tag's coming 882, 8700, 5500, 8700 Fox. I would rather play 8200 Sabonis instead, but I flip flopped on FanDuel Fox over Sabonis over there. But they're a little exciting. Keegan Murray looks pretty awesome for a fantasy perspective. How do you feel about this Kings big three?
Yeah, I'm with you. Keegan Murray projected to be one of the highest owned guys on DraftKings. Small forward, power forward eligible, 5,500. Going to be starting. Hasn't been great in terms of fantasy production this year. He's only played 71 minutes, 0.79 DraftKings points per minute, 17.5% usage rate. Not really rebounding, not getting assists, but he's cheap enough and did play 38 minutes off the bench last game. So likely to just end up being a good value at 5,500. Like you said, he also has the pedigree to just produce at a higher rate going forward, and he probably will. Sabonis coming in at 8,200 seems a bit underpriced to me. Center only, but I've already mentioned there's not a lot of centers I really like on this slate. Sabonis has averaged 1.25 DraftKings points per minute this year. We know he's good at everything. Has a 22.5% usage rate, nearly an 18% rebounding percentage, and a 25.5% assist percentage. So he looks really good. And then De'Aaron Fox just really doing it all offensively this year. So far in 103 minutes, he's averaged 1.5 DraftKings points per minute. That is on an elevated 67.9% shooting, but 34.8% usage rate, 34.4% assist percentage, very, very high upside guard option. Another one of those, $8,500 to $9,500 guards that I really like getting to today.
Yeah, I think De'Aaron Fox has been really impressive in terms of fantasy perspective. We've been used to De'Aaron Fox like in the high sevens, low eights, and maybe this is the year we see him in the high eights and low nines going forward. Speaking of Keegan Murray, I want everyone who's watching and whoever hasn't signed up for a Prize Picks account to do so. Obviously, if you don't know what Prize Picks is, they're our sponsor today. Shout out to them. They make daily prop-based contests in literally any sport you can think of, from obviously the NBA, MLB, and NFL, but sports like even like I believe disc golf has made an appearance on Prize Picks as well. You can make 5-player lineups, net up to 10 extra entry fee. Pretty exciting payouts. And you're playing against the house over there. So use your knowledge, but also use our tool. We have a free tool today, and they have a line of Keegan Murray of 2.5 3-pointers made. I suggest everyone to take the under. The projection right now is less than 1 3-pointer, and we have that expected to win 92% of the time. I will drop the free tool in the chat for you guys to take advantage of. Also, check out the description in the YouTube link below, where you can get 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum and making a $100 deposit match bonus with Prize Picks. So make sure to take advantage of that. Keegan Murray prop. Another one you can take advantage of is the Kyrie Irving under rebounds right now. They have a prop line of 4.5. We have an expected win of 74% with our projection coming in at just shy of 3.5. So a couple exciting Prize Picks to take advantage of. A couple unders. Unders are always fun to sweat over there on Prize Picks. So make sure to take advantage of that, and shout out to them, and thank you. And hit the like button, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. There's about 580 of you guys, 150 likes. If we can get that to 200, that'd be great. And for those of you who are listening, the recorded version, make sure to hit that like button or subscribe on the Apple Podcast feed or any podcast feed. You guys do so. So on to other guys on Sacramento. Flyers on Harrison Barnes, Kevin Herter, Malik Monk, Davion Mitchell. Any one of these guys, Barnes, well, I do expect his usage to step back with Keegan Murray in the picture as the season goes along. It's kind of already happening. I don't know if you've noticed anything with Harrison Barnes' rates, but Kevin Herter is also playing around 30 minutes a night. I don't have much interest in Monk or Davion Mitchell. Wrap up this Kings team for us.
Yeah, only about a 14% usage rate so far this year for Barnes. He is only getting about 10% ownership, so it's a case where, you can certainly throw him into some tournament lineups on a 4-gamer and say, it's still Harrison Barnes. He's got a long track record of being like a 0.85 fantasy point per minute guy. Hopefully he just has that game tonight, but there's not a lot to inspire confidence so far. And like you said, Keegan Murray moving into the starting lineup is another mouth to feed, whereas KZ Okpala is not. Kevin Herter at 4,900, shooting guard, small forward. He's kind of just going to be another like sort of glue piece where I'm not like actively looking to get to a bunch of Kevin Herter, but you're just going to have lineups where it's just like, all right, I have all the pieces I want, and now Kevin Herter fits really well, so he's in there, and that's why he's getting about 15% ownership.
I agree there, and this wraps it up. Before we head out, Adam, any priority plays? I know it's only 11 a.m. Eastern. Any priority plays right now as we things look right now?
Gilgeous Alexander, Keegan Murray. Obviously, if you can get to Luka, but that's kind of difficult right now. But Keegan, SGA, Sabonis at 8,200, I think looks really good.
Yeah, I think those are solid options. And thanks so much. Good luck today, everyone who's watching. Make sure to watch. I don't know. I think there's about 7 hours of live stream content for the rest of the day. Take advantage of that. Hit the like button. Thanks so much. And see you guys soon.